There's a strange kind of power that comes from letting go, not because you want to, but because you have to. You waited. You texted first. You made excuses for his silence. You held on to the idea that maybe, just maybe, he cared as much as you did. But while you were missing him, thinking about him, waiting on him, he was living, unbothered, unchanged. He didn't miss you when you were available. When your heart was wide open and your loyalty unmatched, he didn't see it. Because sometimes people don't value what's always there. They don't appreciate presence until it becomes absence. But the moment you stopped checking his stories, stopped overthinking the unread messages, stopped replying with your whole heart, he noticed. That silence. Love is supposed to be a two-way street. It's not about keeping score, but there should be balance. It's about mutual effort, mutual care, mutual energy. But when you're the only one trying, constantly reaching out, checking in, holding the space between you together with your bare hands, it starts to chip away at you. You wake up with him on your mind. You send the first message, even though the last 10 were yours too. You remember the things he likes, plan around his schedule, try to understand his moods. And what does he do? He shows up when it's convenient, when it's easy, when he feels like it. No effort, no reciprocity, just presence when it suits him. At first, you tell yourself it's okay. You think maybe he's just busy, or maybe he's not good at expressing himself. You make excuses. You romanticize the scraps, thinking that one day he'll see how much you care, and that will be enough to make him care too. But that day never comes. And the longer you keep giving, the more empty you become, because giving love to someone who won't give it back isn't beautiful. It's exhausting. You start to lose yourself in the process. Your self-esteem dips. You question if you're too much, too emotional, too needy. But the truth is, you're not too much. You're just giving too much to someone who gives too little. Love doesn't demand you drain yourself dry. It doesn't ask you to carry it alone. Real love meets you halfway. It sees your effort and reflects it. And when you're the only one pouring, eventually there's nothing left to give. And here's the worst part. When you're constantly overextending for someone who doesn't value it, you start to believe that this is all you're worth. That love is supposed to be this hard, but it's not. Love is supposed to feel safe, nurturing, alive. If it only flows one way, it isn't love. It's longing. And longing will leave you tired, bitter, and empty. When someone always shows up, it's easy to stop noticing they're there. And when you love someone deeply, when you're consistent, reliable, emotionally available, it becomes second nature to them. Your presence becomes part of their routine. It's not exciting anymore. It's just expected. That's what happened with you. You were there day in and day out. You listened when he needed to talk. You stayed up late to make time for him, even when you were exhausted. You were the good morning and good night. The one who never forgot the little things. His favorite song, the way he liked his coffee, the quiet things he said when he thought no one was really listening. You gave him a place to land, a place to breathe, to be seen. But instead of appreciating that, he got comfortable. He stopped saying thank you. He stopped matching your energy. He started assuming you'd always be there, because up until now, you always had been. The things you did out of love, he started expecting. Your presence was no longer a gift to him, it became his habit. And the worst part, the more you showed up, the less he seemed to notice. It's almost like your kindness became invisible. The more available you were, the less valuable you seemed. Because people don't always cherish what they think they'll never lose. He didn't stop to ask how you were doing. He didn't wonder what it cost you to be that emotionally invested. He never paused to think that maybe your heart was showing up every day with bruises, just trying to hold on. It's a harsh truth, but sometimes people only learn to appreciate what you gave them after it's gone. When your texts stop coming in, when your name isn't the first one lighting up their phone, when the person who was always there suddenly isn't, that's when they feel the emptiness, the silence, the weight of everything they once had and never thanked you for. But by then, it's not just about you being gone. It's about the fact that you were always there and they never noticed the miracle of it. You don't realize how powerful you are until you finally let go of the thing you thought you couldn't live without. Detachment doesn't come easy, especially when you've loved someone deeply. When you've built pieces of your day, your hopes, your future, even your identity around a person, letting go feels unnatural. Wrong, even, because your heart still wants to fight, still wants to fix, still believes that love means staying, even when staying is hurting you. But there comes a moment, a quiet shift, when the pain of holding on becomes heavier than the fear of letting go. And that's when something powerful happens. Detachment begins. It doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slowly. You stop checking your phone so obsessively. You no longer scan social media for a glimpse of him. You catch yourself going an hour, then a day, then a week without wondering what he's doing or who he's with. That tight grip around your emotions starts to loosen. And what replaces it isn't numbness. It's clarity. You start to see things as they are, not as you hoped they would be. You realize that love isn't supposed to make you feel like you're begging to be seen. That it shouldn't be you doing all the chasing, all the explaining, all the proving. Detachment shows you the truth. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You don't need to keep showing up for someone who never truly showed up for you. And in that truth, you find your power. It's the kind of power that isn't loud or angry. It's calm, steady, unshakable. Because when you detach emotionally, you're no longer controlled by the push and pull of someone else's inconsistency. You stop reacting to breadcrumbs. You stop clinging to what you thought it could be. You reclaim your energy. And that's when the tables turn. Because the moment you pull back, really pull back, not out of manipulation, but out of self-respect, people feel it. Your silence becomes louder than your words ever were. Your distance becomes magnetic. And suddenly, the one who never had time for you is wondering where you went. But by then, your power is no longer tied to their attention. Every emotion, every change in your tone, every moment of distance, you explained it. You tried to make him understand how you felt. You spelled it out, hoping your words would somehow reach him, hoping that if he just got it, he would care more, try harder, show up differently. But no matter how clearly you spoke, how vulnerably you opened up, it felt like your voice echoed into emptiness. Like you were having a conversation with someone who had already emotionally left the room. So you talked louder. You became more available. You over-communicated. You tried harder. Until one day, you didn't. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped sending the long paragraphs he barely read. You stopped initiating the conversations. You stopped trying to make him understand how much he was hurting you. And the silence that followed, it was deafening. Not just for him, but for you, too. Because silence is powerful. It's not just the absence of words. It's the presence of a boundary. It's the moment you stop begging to be heard and start choosing your own peace over their confusion. It's the space where your self-respect finally takes the microphone. At first, he might not even notice. He's used to you making noise, showing up, reaching out. But eventually, he realizes something's missing. That your good mornings are gone. That your consistent check-ins have vanished. That the girl who always filled the silence now is the silence. And that speaks volumes. Because silence forces people to face the void they created. It holds up a mirror to their neglect, their inconsistency, their inability to value you when you were still trying. There's no more dialogue to hide behind, no more comfort in your availability. Just quiet, still, cold, honest. Silence doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It doesn't try to prove a point. It just exists. And in that existence, it confronts everything your words could never reach. He may have ignored your messages, misunderstood your tears, dismissed your voice. But silence is undeniable. It lingers. It echoes. It makes people wonder, regret, and remember. There's something painfully ironic about how people work. They don't always appreciate what's right in front of them until it's gone. He didn't miss you while you were missing him, when your heart ached for a response, when you stayed up late hoping he'd call, when you looked for signs that he cared, replaying old memories, holding on to half-hearted moments that once felt like everything. You were there, emotionally wide open, waiting, and he didn't feel your absence because there was none. You filled the space. You filled the silence. You held it all together even when it was clearly falling apart. You were missing him while he was busy being fine. Because comfort can be blinding. And when someone knows you're always going to be there, they stop checking to see if you still want to be. He didn't feel your love as something rare. He saw it as routine. Your texts were expected. Your attention guaranteed. You missing him became a background noise, constant, dependable, and eventually invisible. But the moment that changed, the moment you stopped missing him, really stopped, something inside him shifted. Not because he suddenly realized he loved you, but because he realized something he was used to had vanished. That attention, affection, emotional presence, it all disappeared. And with it, the comfort he'd taken for granted. Suddenly, your silence wasn't just silence. It was distance. Your detachment wasn't indifference. It was freedom. You no longer needed him to respond. You no longer craved his approval. And that's when he noticed you. Because that's when you finally stopped orbiting around him. He didn't miss you because he valued you. He missed you because he felt the absence of your energy, the warmth he never acknowledged while it was shining on him. And maybe that's the most bittersweet part. He didn't miss the real you. He missed the version of you that made him feel wanted, adored, prioritized. He missed the convenience of being loved without effort. He missed the luxury of your emotional availability. But now he has to live with the silence, with the realization that the very thing he ignored is the thing he's now desperate to feel again. Just because someone misses you doesn't mean they deserve another chance with you. And that's where it gets complicated, because when someone you once loved finally starts to feel your absence, it can be tempting to interpret that as love, as growth, as proof that they've changed. But missing you, that's not the same as understanding the damage they caused. It's not the same as being ready to show up in the way you always needed. You spent so long hoping he would feel your absence. You pictured the moment, him scrolling through old photos, rereading your messages, finally feeling what you felt. And now, maybe he is. Maybe he's reaching out again, sending those late night texts, hinting at regret, saying he's been thinking about you. But don't confuse that with accountability. There's a difference between realizing what you had and being ready to treat it right. A difference between missing how you made someone feel and truly valuing you as a person. Sometimes people miss the way you loved them, the way you were soft with their hard edges, the way you stayed even when they gave you every reason to leave, the way you saw the best in them even when they were showing you their worst. They miss the comfort, the convenience, the constant reassurance. But that doesn't mean they've grown. That doesn't mean they suddenly know how to love you right. Missing you is emotional. It's nostalgic. It's often selfish. Deserving you, that's intentional. That's consistent. That's mature. To deserve you means showing up, not just when it's convenient, not just when you're gone, but daily, quietly, steadily. It means taking responsibility, acknowledging the hurt, and putting in the work to be better, not just to get you back, but to be better for themselves. Too often, we mistake longing for love. We hear, "I miss you," and our hearts skip a beat. But here's the truth. Some people only miss the version of you they had access to when they didn't have to earn it. They don't miss the real you, the you with needs, expectations, standards. They miss the version of you who tolerated more than you should have, the version who gave more than she received, the version who stayed even when she was breaking, and you've outgrown her. So when he says he misses you, look deeper. Ask yourself, does he miss you, or does he miss the way your love made him feel? Because only one of those means he deserves another chance, and the other is just nostalgia in disguise. There's a moment in every healing journey when the pain stops feeling like a punishment and starts becoming a lesson. A quiet shift where instead of asking, "Why didn't he choose me?" you begin to ask, "Why was I waiting to be chosen in the first place?" That moment is growth. And it starts when you remember who you are and what you deserve. You see, when you were in it, when your heart was wrapped around someone who couldn't see your value, you doubted yourself. You questioned whether you were too much, too emotional, too sensitive. You shrank yourself to fit into a version of love that was never built to hold you. You lowered your voice, your expectations, your needs, all just to be enough for someone who was never enough for you. But growth is the day you stop apologizing for needing more. It's the day you realize that wanting consistency isn't clingy, that needing communication isn't being too much, that expecting effort isn't asking for the world. It's asking for the bare minimum. Growth is painful because it means shedding the version of you who accepted less than she deserved. It means grieving the love you gave so freely to someone who didn't know what to do with it. It means walking away, not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving yourself more. It's not always loud. Sometimes growth is quiet. It's deleting the message you were about to send because you know it won't change anything. It's choosing not to check their page because you're tired of picking at wounds you're finally letting heal. It's the heavy but necessary decision to choose peace over hope. And in that space, something powerful happens. You start to see yourself differently. You remember your strength. You rediscover your standards. You reclaim your softness, not as a weakness, but as a sacred part of your power. You no longer see love as something you need to chase, beg for, or prove yourself worthy of. You understand that the right love will never ask you to break yourself into pieces just to be accepted. Because growth isn't just about moving on. It's about moving up into a higher version of yourself, into spaces that match your energy, into relationships that feel like home, not battles, There's a kind of peace that only comes when you finally remove yourself from the spaces where you are constantly shrinking, constantly questioning, constantly giving without getting. And maybe the most surprising part, that peace doesn't feel loud or triumphant at first. It feels quiet, still, almost unfamiliar. Because when you've been wrapped in chaos, even calm can feel like something to brace for. But it's in that stillness, away from him, away from the noise, away from the emotional tug of war, that you start to breathe differently, deeper, slower, fully. For the first time in what feels like forever, you realize you're not waiting anymore. Not waiting for a reply, not waiting to be chosen, not waiting for someone to love you the way you kept trying to love them. You're not performing. You're not overthinking every text. You're not sitting on the edge of your emotions, wondering if today he'll care enough to ask how you're doing. And the most powerful part, you don't miss the version of you that lived like that. You see your absence from him gave you presence with yourself. You started listening to your own voice again. You heard your intuition, loud and clear, the one you used to silence every time you made excuses for him. You remembered your own rhythm, your laughter, the parts of you that used to shine before you got dimmed by someone who never saw your light as sacred. And sure, healing isn't always pretty. There were nights you cried, days you doubted, moments you almost went back, not because you believed he changed, but because you were still healing the parts of yourself that thought love had to hurt. But slowly, you found peace, not in someone else's arms, not in a rebound or distraction, but in your own quiet. You made a home out of your solitude. You stopped trying to fill the silence and started learning from it. You realized that being alone isn't lonely when you're finally aligned with your own worth. Your absence from his life. It may have left a void for him, but your absence from that version of yourself, that desperate, overgiving, constantly explaining girl, that was the beginning of your freedom. So here you are, no longer waiting, no longer chasing, no longer shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's broken version of love. He didn't miss you until you stopped missing him. And by then, it was too late, because you had already evolved, already outgrown the version of yourself that clung to what was never meant for you. You stopped showing up where you weren't seen. You stopped bleeding for someone who wouldn't even offer you a bandage. And in that silence, that space, that sacred absence, you found you, your strength, your softness, your standards. You realized you were never too much. You were just too much for someone who was never enough. And maybe he does miss you now. Maybe he plays your favorite songs and remembers the way your laugh used to fill a room. But that's not your problem anymore. Because the real plot twist, you finally stopped missing him and started remembering you. And that's when the story changed.